The purity of the gold is a symbolization of the purity of the love that you guys have for one another in your hearts. Gold doesn't tarnish over time. Gold will always be pure. I will always be there. And place the ring upon her hand, completing the circle.
Try that one on and see how you get on with that one. I did a talk at the London Jewellery Week. So I asked them, I said, put your hands up in the air if you have a gold ring on. And so 50%, about 50% put their hands up. And I said, right, keep your hands up if you know where the gold came from in your ring. And they all put their hands down.
This is like playing detective. The best thing you can use is your eyes. You're looking for something different. We're trying to figure out what this place looked like 40 to 50 million years ago when the mineralization actually came into the rocks. Here at Kaleida, we can follow the vein for a mile. And then we hit two valleys, and it's not on the other side. So where is it? That becomes the challenge. We're probably going to be spending about $1 million, $1.5 million this year on this project. If it's successful, we'll spend another $4 or $5 million next year. In exploration, you have huge, huge rewards, but huge, huge risks of actually finding something. Sometimes it's flakes the size of a pinhead. Holy crap. Thought I found some gold there for a minute. This is where we get down a little bit more. If you notice right in here, right around the brown, you see all the little specks? That's where the gold occurs. You get enough of those, that makes it an economic deposit.
Gold travels discreetly. Most days of the week at Heathrow Airport, there'll be between 5 and 10 aircraft landing with a sizable shipment of gold going into a secure vault. London's spot markets, it's all about this, a physical market. It's all about the hard metal. It is very narrowly controlled and confined between gold vaults, and then it's released into the retail market. Now, the interesting thing about a 1 ounce gold bar or coin is it holds its value in the very, very long term. Money dissolves, whereas gold maintains what economists call purchasing power parity. It's a safe haven asset, and it'll protect you in times of economic uncertainty. A safe haven asset is not just what you buy, it's also where you keep it. which is why here, clients can walk in and buy it, take it home. Some of our clients, and we don't like it, are buried in their gardens. If you had a 1 ounce coin in biblical times, 2,000 years ago, it would buy you a suit of clothing. In Henry VIII's time, an ounce of gold would buy you a suit of armor. And today, you can get suited and booted for £1,000. It maintains its value in the long term, unlike money, which decays.
If you made it an infinite supply, well, then it would have no value. So scarcity is what gives it its economic power. So much of the modern financial world is extraordinarily complex and abstract, and gold is very concrete. You can hold it, you can dig it out of the ground, and it feels, therefore, reliable to people. When the economy does poorly, there's a lot of people buy gold.
From January 2000, gold went up 16% year on year until 2008, when the economic crisis hit. And it traveled at 24% a year, so gold went absolutely ballistic. Gold is not an asset class, it's a religion. And people have a view about gold which goes beyond what is realistic about any normal asset class.
It is so linked to our sense of ourselves in ways that I think many people don't even recognize.
It's built into our whole psyche. Gold is like that. No other element has that same pizzazz. Nothing like gold. You have the gold bugs and people that love gold, so they will invest. Sometimes I call it mining the public. It's a huge gamble, and that's why people do it.
At 140, there's Chicago going.
They're addicted, just like gambling. You have got people that are crazy about gold, and they are just like going to the casino and betting on the roulette wheel. The odds are slightly better on the roulette wheel than
Had the gold not been discovered, it's very hard to imagine the United States occupying the kind of central place in the world that we see after World War I. But it is really, really integral to the country's economic history, and we sort of think that we should be at the center of the world at some level. And in part, I think that has a lot to do with the discovery of gold here, and the feeling that, but of course, it's our birthright. God put the gold there because he wanted the United States to be prosperous. That's the way that people thought.
The potential here is for 1 million ounces of gold. So I went and took a look at it and said, okay, how are we going to go after this? So we have to explore. Because of the technology, the rise in price, that lowers the cost. And that's what it's all about. What does it cost you to produce an ounce of gold?
There was hundreds of people up and down this creek during the Depression, and if they would work 6 or 7 days a week, they could scratch out enough gold to trade for groceries at Immigrant.
Yeah.
But it saved them.
Sure.
It saved them in that
They're
respect.
mining for food.
Yes. Yeah, my mother and father-in-law were among the ones doing that.
I have photos. There's not a single tree anywhere on these hillsides. The old miners cut them all down. Why would we want to go back to that? When we first heard about this project, we got the scoping notice from the Forest Service. First thing we did is we went and found this technical report. You look on the map here and you go, oh, it's literally everything we see in front of us, plus most of everything that's behind us. It's the whole valley. They're saying that there's 2 billion tons of ore here.
The top 500 to 1,000 feet has been explored just about everywhere. Before you had to have 30-gram gold per ton. Today, that's super high grade for us. We're down to mining 0.5 gram per ton.
That's something like 300 trucks a day, 365 days a year for 20 years. They told me this, we're not going to come up and rape and pillage your backyard. We would never do that. Those were their words. And I'm like, you can't take 1 billion tons of ore out of here, plus all the waste rock, without destroying this incredible landscape. I mean, look at it.
Yellowstone tourism has been increasing without a hiccup hardly since 1946. 71 years of growth. That's pretty dependable. Industrial-sized gold mines, the money leaves here. It doesn't stay here. Our pioneering, spirited entrepreneurs, that money stays here.
I came to Yellowstone Park as a sophomore in college. All of it just seemed so wild and untouched that I was very drawn to it. This is a giant life source for us. The quality of life that this brings is as rich as, any dollar figure that you could possibly need. It is a very uneasy feeling to think that one toxic spill and it would definitely not be the same river that it is today. The risk outweighs any possible reward, and I don't think that gambling with our quality of life is worth it.
One of the big impacts from gold mining operations are acid mine drainage. This is what it looks like. This is acid mine drainage that I collected downstream from the Zortman-Landesky gold mine here in Montana. The sulfuric acid is like battery acid, so it's toxic to fish and other aquatic life downstream.
You've got the environmental opposition, which won't allow you to build anything near anybody. They absolutely try to protect everything under the sun. Yet, for your camera, your sound, everything here, it's all metal. Everybody needs metal. So where are you going to get it from?
help the local economy. Young people can't afford to live here.
But there's opportunity too for young people to make good money here with some imagination and a work ethic.
There's an interesting difference between a product that is gold and an experience. And what we make a living off of here is the experience of this landscape and the value of the beauty. It's much harder to compare to my ring. Somehow this is more valuable than an experience, when actually it's the opposite.
The risk is big. So if you're gonna do mining, then make sure you've got a long-term way to pay back the loss if there was a disaster. Just start there.
Most gold these days are low-grade deposits where there's a small percent of gold interspersed in a large volume of rock. 20 tons of mine waste are generated in order to produce just one small ring. The most common method of mining gold is cyanide leaching. They're using a cyanide solution to extract the gold. Inevitably, we see at so many sites around the country where the company leaves, the company files for bankruptcy, and we're left with these very toxic sites forever.
Gold has always had a huge benefit, but also fear because of the magic word cyanide, big tailings ponds and these type of things. We come here regularly to talk, to update the city council, show them what we're doing. We've got environmentalists, we've got public relations, we've got government relations, and so it has very little impact.
I reviewed the track record of 27 operating gold mines responsible for roughly 93% of US gold production. And we found that 100% of these mines had experienced spills of hazardous materials. Mining technology is generating a larger and larger volume amount of mine waste that has to be stored behind taller and taller tailings dams, and that's just a recipe for disaster. The most recent example is in British Columbia, just over the border from where I am.
It may be the worst environmental disaster in British Columbia's history. 10 million cubic meters of wastewater containing dangerous chemicals poured into local waterways when the earthen dam surrounding a tailings pond collapsed.
Lake was just full. You couldn't see anything but wood, big piles of wood. Some of it was like 20 feet high. Man, it was just, you just didn't know. Yeah, there's no words.
When the disaster happened, communities all around responded like it was a death. People were crying and people were grieving because they knew that having all of what was in that mine, all of that pollution, rush down into the water and to pollute the entire Fraser watershed.
We knew we only had days to fish. We had fishermen from my community go down and fish the Fraser. And they fished it hard for at least 2 days because they were worried about the tailings affecting the salmon. And being a salmon people, that was devastating.
First Nations that live all along the Fraser River down to the ocean
that's what I'm
that are
saying.
depending on that salmon, which we just put our nets in the river yesterday.
If we have that impact, then we are responsible.
The Mount Holly Dam was designed as a centerline dam. And then what happened, money got tight. And they decided that they were going to build it much steeper. They'd had a lot of rain, they had a lot of excess water. They were trying to manage it by storing it in their tailings pond and then treating it and discharging it, and they were waiting for a discharge permit. So that dam was just as full as it was allowed to be. What they didn't know was that under a portion of the dam was an old glacial lake. And that glacial lake basically behaves like a banana peel. And that piece of dam just gave way, just slipped right out.
Can you tell me how much your insurance coverage is? And do you have the money if it costs $500 million to clean it up?
We don't have $400 million in the bank, so we'll have to make that to do it.
I became involved in environmental and human rights class actions against a range of companies, many of which were from the mining sector. We had the largest team of class action lawyers in the country. Politicians at all levels of government seem to be quite comfortable with the fact that this industry is the dominant force in Canada's economy and one upon which we become extraordinarily dependent. This is Brookfield Place. This is where Barrick Gold, the largest gold mining company in the world, is headquartered. This is where the major law firms that service the mining industry are situated. Over here you have the Royal Bank of Canada's headquarters, which is the largest bank in Canada. And just a little bit further up Bay Street, you have the Toronto Stock Exchange, the largest mining stock exchange in the world. 50% of the world's mining companies are based in Canada. And as a result of its importance to the Canadian economy, it's acquired a very considerable influence over the political process. One of the wealthiest Canadians, Murray Edwards, is a major shareholder of Imperial Metals. Murray Edwards had a very close relationship with the former BC Premier Christy Clark.
We say yes to the men and women who work here.
In the 2012 provincial election, Mr. Edwards organized a $1 million fundraiser for Miss Clark. And at the end of the day, she actually squeaked out a victory. And her policies towards the mining sector have been extraordinarily favorable.
If you can't get the resource out of the ground, you are going to imperil the future of our entire province.
No meaningful penalty was imposed upon Imperial Metals. And it's difficult not to conclude that part of the reason for that is because the government was favorably inclined towards Mr. Edwards and his company because of the financial support he'd given to them.
We decided to focus primarily on looking at the quality of the sediment and the material that got delivered into the lake, and to try and start to understand the effect on the ecosystem.
The community really appreciates the fact that we're doing independent research and we're not paid by the mine. So our allegiance is with the community. The sediment gets ingested by filter feeding invertebrates, zooplankton, and then those zooplankton are the fish food that gets eaten.
Not surprisingly, the sediment is contaminated. Copper, arsenic, selenium, vanadium, there's some mercury as well. It still looks beautiful. Visually, it's no different, but there's that cloud hanging over it, as well as the cloud within the water of the fact that it's an environment that's been heavily disturbed and even contaminated.
There are more unanswered questions regarding the salmon in the water because we're in year 3 of a 4-year salmon cycle. So next year will be really telling, and the year after. It's really important that we get it right with Mount Poly and that there's some justice brought, because this is setting really dangerous precedents in British Columbia and Canada and around the world.
People actually die in these tailings dams failures. There's nobody that knows how many of these failures there are. The reason they get covered up is because it's an embarrassment to the company that has been operating them, and it's embarrassing to the regulatory agency that supposedly had responsibility for that.
The first thing that comes to mind when I hear the word gold is like dirty gold. It's death, it's violence, it's colonization. I think of all of the indigenous peoples of North and South America and around the world, people from all over who have suffered. For them to be so rich, there are so many who have to be so poor. That's what I think of when I see gold.
也就是我们的零售销售额，在100亿以上。我们的接待顾客的这个接待人次啊，就服务次数超过100万人。
Gold is seen as a symbol of wealth and symbol of prosperity. It's been valued for thousands of years. Chinese people worry about what's going to happen in the future. They purchase gold as a hedge against, what might happen in China in case there is, some kind of trade war with the U.S. or some other financial crisis that comes up. People feel that gold will be seen as something valuable regardless of what the situation may be.
我们住在大山中，没有经济来源，想娶媳妇，说是1个月能挣300元钱，一次性能挣300元，心里感觉到很高很高的工资。初次来的时候，在山上是做这个背矿工，感觉到背矿很累。这下我看人家站工，1个月挣的钱多，这个出的力小。现在山上都杂乱无章的，1级承包到2级，2级承包到3级，也没有河，什么证据，什么都没有。我不在矿上干，我 这些子女怎么上学？
是，没有在前几年，不过上了正油了。儿子不是呀，儿子在去年在底下的学校的。一点吧，有劳动力的他都出门打工了，家里都没有，家里的有的人就是婆婆、小孩，你叫我们三厨，你在家干啥？干啥都不行。
山上的水源很少，就用干钻打眼儿，灰尘很大，感觉这个灰很呛很呛，可是不知道这个灰对人身体有害。
It's effectively like sand, and those particles can scar the lungs. So you could be in there for extremely long hours, all day, each day, in circumstances where you don't have proper masks, you don't have proper respiratory protection, and you don't have proper ventilation. Once it arises, silicosis is incurable.
42天以前，我弟弟就出事了。妈妈给我打电话，我当时就急忙的往回赶，赶回去以后，结果2个弟弟的最后一面都没见上。
总来说，那个瘟疫情况把人害坏。
不是的，人那个心里有事，只能说是怕，说的话。所以来人呢，我都什么不都说。所以我们大众日子失家了，我想起来我都跑不到这儿。所以说心里今天漏气了。
融合灶这一片，你看，这片都有融合的趋势了，肝脏比这做满。
最近2年没走，最近都是一发了买点小片子一喝。查要钱了，没得钱怎么查？
看你把你这病不治啊，媳妇、娃、房子，所有的遗产，我是人家的，100个的钱都换不来这些东西。
好比是天塌了一样，我说不可能吧？
到下午3点多，我还屁股抬不起来。从官方层面报的这个人数，就明显增加了。他刚刚说90几个，我上一次来第一次来16个。
Unfortunately, time and time again, what I've seen personally is that mining companies will do the least they can for the least amount of cost if they can get away with it. It's a multi-billion-dollar industry, and yet the pay that these guys were getting was tiny, and they're left with a lifelong disease.
过去的生活，我们可以就说是脚踏当地方政府，团结在一块儿的力量比今要大一点。
是不是？你要人少了，你起个10来个人，一看这人少，没得力量，人家都不理事你。
也就是我们的34个人都要起，3万这个掉队，这个起这个不起的也不得了。 总来说是没钱吧，也没有钱吃药了，只有死路一条。这个官司打赢了嘞，我们就有希望。
If you're an affected individual or you're an affected community, it is extremely difficult to basically get your rights upheld. And one of the problems is, not only is the court system inaccessible, but how on earth do you get the evidence that you need to demonstrate that what you're saying you're experiencing is actually the responsibility of the mining company that you perceive to be responsible? So getting all of that and bringing that to a court of law and actually getting your rights upheld is extremely rare.
我们说了个坑口，他说是没有那个坑口，他说文玉金矿没有那个坑口，我们也没有抱多大的希望，但是就是等到死吧。
本来我准备不干，可是我弟弟留下了2个儿女，我自己3个儿女，我该怎么办呢？我想，我弟是因为我做了战更以后，把他带出来打仗，我感到心里很内疚，很内疚，一直到至今心里都不很愉快。
Yo soy arequipeño y como la economía allá afuera no es sustentable, me vine acá a juntar un poco de dinero y bueno.
Vengo de Quito, pero vengo hoy.
Pagamos un 25% y de los cuales nos repartimos entre los dos. Prácticamente no ganamos diario.
A veces no queda, depende del terreno. Cuando hay una buena cantidad encuentras, si tienes suerte encuentras una buena cantidad de oro.
Se habla pues de 70.000, 80.000, no se sabe cuántas decenas de miles de mineros informales. Ese es un ecosistema tan frágil que no soporta tanta gente. Ese es uno de los principales alimentadores de la cuenca amazónica y a su vez sabemos que el río Amazonas es la principal fuente de agua dulce de la humanidad. Ese es un territorio que sostiene bosques primarios, que son el principal sumidero de carbono de la humanidad contra el calentamiento global. Es uno de los grandes pulmones de la humanidad. Una vez que tú deforestaste, metiste una draga, tiraste toda esa porquería otra vez a la tierra, esa tierra no puede producir nada. El oro es una maldición para la Amazonía peruana.
de que nos han invadido, han venido colonos, nos han invadido, casi nos han quitado todo lo que era nuestro, ¿no? Trabajaremos por lo mínimo, nada más solo para educación para nuestros hijos y para la comida nada más. Pues estudiar más antes, pero casi no termina mejor que un semestre, porque como no, a veces te falta recursos, por falta de plata, a veces no hay.
Compramos oro de los mineros, con factura, no compramos a las personas ilegales. Un convenio que la empresa es, ¿cómo se llama? Activos mineros.
¿Pero quiénes son?
Nosotros no conocemos realmente, nosotros trabajamos, enviamos.
With gold prices increasing, some of the South American armed groups have very consciously moved into gold as an alternative source of funding from narcotics and drugs. In Colombia and Peru, two of the countries that produce the most amount of cocaine in the world, the value of the illegal gold trade now exceeds the value of that drugs trade.
La gente arriesga meterse en una economía que en muchos casos está controlada por mafias. La gente arriesga trabajar en un medio que es muy duro desde el punto de vista del esfuerzo físico, pero que además es muy duro desde el punto de vista del entorno de violencia. En algún momento contra la minería ilegal, en el sentido de ingresar con el ejército, sobre todo con la marina, dinamitar las dragas flotantes que se usan, destruir campamentos, en fin. En realidad no logras nada porque esa gente no está ahí por placer. La mayor parte de estos mineros ilegales e informales en la selva de Madre de Dios son migrantes pobres, son gente que viene del mundo rural andino, de un mundo rural andino donde todavía los indicadores de pobreza extrema y de pobreza absolutamente impresentables.
A simple way to get some of the gold is to use mercury.
It's extremely toxic to life. It's the most powerful neurotoxin on the planet, mercury. So there's a huge health problem immediately to the practitioners, a local severe health problem also to the community around them because it all becomes contaminated with mercury. It's a gas when you evaporate it, so it goes all the way around the world. It's a global pollutant, and it lands in the oceans and contaminates fish, and all of us are ultimately exposed to higher level of mercury intake. Especially if you happen to, like sushi and you eat a lot of top-level predators from the ocean.
Y tengo entendido que afecta el medio ambiente demasiado, ¿no? Pero no hay otra forma de procesarlo, ¿no?
¿Tú sabes que es malo para tu salud?
Ah, sí. Sí, pero como te digo, de repente quién sabe que está enfermo y ya estoy consciente de eso, de algo tenemos que morir algún día. No, nadie es eterno en esta vida.
I was thinking of something with an engraved band on it. I've seen that around and I thought that was really pretty and kind of special.
So our main kind of solitaire is called a love note, and we just finished a really nice engraving on it in rose gold. So
do you know anything about the way gold is produced in their usual conditions?
Only the usual things that you kind of read in the news and the horrible labor standards that do exist in some places, but I haven't really dug very deeply into it. Have you?
No, not me. I guess like part of it is that you have to find somebody that knows about these things, right? Well, we've seen several different jewelers, and we immediately ask about the origin, what they can tell us about the gold, because we know very little, and we need somebody that we can trust to tell us something about it.
More and more, as the younger generation, the millennials that are coming up now, these people want to know, especially buying wedding rings and engagement rings. They really care and want to know where the gold comes from in their ring.
Do you know the term conflict gold?
Conflict diamonds.
Conflict diamonds resonates more.
Probably similar, the idea that these minerals are being mined to fund terrorist activities or civil wars and stuff like that. Presumably it applies to gold as well.
I think we definitely don't want to be part of the conflict gold by, funding it or contributing to it in any way.
Congo est potentiellement riche, surtout de l'or. Le pays pouvait survivre avec tous ces minéraux, mais malheureusement, c'est la guerre qui trace toutes les stratégies de l'économie dans la région.
If you ever visit an artisanal gold mine, the first thing you realize is that gold mining is incredibly dangerous and incredibly hard work. Armed groups themselves don't want any part of it. They use their weapons and their force to illegally tax those miners or to extort them or simply to steal from them at regular intervals. Using gold as a means of sustaining their operations, buying weapons, paying troops, laundering their money, etc.
And when I moved into the jewelry sector, I discovered actually there was no supply chain management. No one knew where anything came from. And to me, that is a lack of ethics, is a lack of integrity, and the consumer doesn't know what they're actually buying.
Pure in the gold sense. Undoubtedly the gold is pure gold, but we don't know if its history is as pure as the gold content. Very large quantities of gold get mixed together in a way that then becomes very difficult to understand where the gold came from, who sold it to you. Gold, unlike drugs or other illicit commodities, is not inherently illegal. It's perfectly legal to sell gold on international markets. All you need to do is find a weak link in the international supply chain where you can slip your quantity of gold into the trade flows without anyone asking too many questions or looking too hard at where it came from.
around 2012 when new guidelines were being issued to stop the trade in what's called conflict minerals. Different countries introduced new third-party audit schemes. So that's when things actually started to come to me. At the time, there were 3 refiners in Dubai. Kaluti has about 50% of the market share.
"25 years ago, we started a business between me and my uncle. We are importing the gold from Suriname, for example, in Miami, and exporting to us.
You're starting, it's like a green field. You don't know what you're going to see. The team started going to visit the refiners and talking to them and checking what they have and what they don't have.
We receive the gold, we confirm the purity with the customer. If he confirms, then we give for refinery.
Slowly, I'm starting hearing from the team that things don't look very pretty. We're not talking about somebody coming to sell an ounce of gold. We're talking about people selling kilos in the excess of 5.2 billion US dollars were used in 1 year as cash payments. So that represents about maybe over 40% of Kaluti's business. One of the easy ways to hide the origin of something suspicious is you use cash because you cut the traceability. It doesn't go through the banking system. The money laundering 101.
This is the place where we receive the shipments. They're coming from the airports. This is from Africa coming. This is from Europe.
The process itself lacks really any scrutiny. If you are a gold smuggler and bringing it to Dubai, customs officials will ask you to show the last boarding pass. And even if your gold was coming, let's say, from DRC, going to Paris, and then from Paris to Dubai, they will look at the last boarding pass of the last trip and register that as the country of origin. We realized that some of these names, they're actually suppliers of Kaluti. One of those suppliers done more than 400 million US dollars in cash with Kaluti that was linked to those smugglers that are trading with the DRC.
Sababu watu tunauza nabo gold ni batu ya magroupe arme na saba naita hawaizi tuita na biko na mwede 1 kilo sikie banajua ke c'est trop risqué kufanya nini kuenda na franka juu endo bebane na bo magrame wala bo matola. Koma Rwanda mimi nawaza ni bariere yenyewe natumikaka kuanza ma 6h mpaka hata ma 22h. Alors wale ma 22 ma busiku bakubwa benye biko macho sana banakuwa walishaenda pumzika. Kuna bakia watu wenye unaweza fika uko na $500 yako unaweza vukisha hata 20 ou 10 kilo yako yao. Hakuna probleme, banawaza tu kwa circulation yako. batu yote majorite wenye wananunua oro banajilimitaka sana ni Dubai. Tobo banajua kama kwenye oro linatokaka kuna kufaka watu, wanajua kweli ki huku ni vita. Tobo biko mu business.
Kaluti was not doing proper due diligence and committed serious violations that in many cases were systematic. We had obligations to report and disclose the findings, and EY just decided that they don't want to disclose, period, to anybody. They wanted to protect the reputation of the refiners as well as the reputation of the gold trade in Dubai. They watered down certain findings. So everything we identified, serious violations, shocking violations, never seen the light of the day. They wanted me to take part in that, and I refused. I refused to sign the reports, and I refused to cooperate with them in hiding those findings. Becoming a whistleblower, you just overnight find yourself being labeled as a troublemaker or you're blacklisted.
Have you been back to Dubai since everything happened?
Absolutely not. I'm not a... It's a risky place for me. Let's put it this way. It wouldn't be safe for me to go back to Dubai.
I think recent history has shown we can't just rely on regulators, we can't just rely on auditors and industry schemes. What we're seeing in jurisdictions like Dubai is that these laws just aren't being enforced rigorously enough, and there just isn't enough political will really to bring about that change.
When I reflect on my early career, I can't say for sure that I wasn't complicit in somebody being exploited at some point in the supply chain, because that's a very murky and remains a very murky supply chain. I co-founded Fair Trade Jewelry Company with the idea of producing a product where we could tell people where everything came from. I think we've done in a very short amount of time something that no one else has done in the past, especially out of a place like DRC. We're working with the Canadian NGO Impact, and we have a great exporter, Fair Congo.
Mama pendeza one tu oro oro na pangana huku yote iko tu oro ti.
Inaonesha matrasi ya oro ndani ya shule.
Yao hapa iko naonekana yote. Kazi yangu niko mama buloneze, niko mama presidente wa babuloneze. Tukisha bulone tunakamata ile majiwe tunatia musaki. Tukisha pasula zile majiwe tunabeba ile majiwe tunapeleka ku mashini, yani kongaseri. Tukishafikisha pale ku kongaseri tunabeba tena ile pusiere yenye ilisaga, tunaloanisha, tunasukula, kisha kusukula tunatosha oro. Alikuwa anachimba oro lakini hakujulikana. Oro ilikuwa kinashukaka usiku na mchana. Bwana na njoo mwenye anaujishaka. Akenda ujisha karibisha kule hautasema, ukasema na kupiga yule wenyewe.
Ndio. Karibuni mama. Pole bana kazi. Ndio mnatumika mingi.
Umeujisha oro yako unakuya na carte de crédit, litaka mzuri. Hii oro unatosha wapi? Juu iko traceability bananunuaka oro yenye iko halali.
Oro inatoka 0.38.
Oro yenye haiko ya damu.
Unajikata.
Each step of the way, there's at least one document, and sometimes more than one. We know what miner, based on their miner ID, we know the pit and what they produced each day. I could see the dark marks. The bars are about the same size, and the backs of them that weren't so shiny looked the same. There are much easier ways to get gold. I could buy gold from the Canadian Mint. It would be less expensive, but it wouldn't solve any problems. By purchasing it legally and exporting it legally, you're actually having a spin-off effect in terms of decreasing the level of conflict by not having as much black money around to buy arms.
Na mwi kazi ya oro nilikuwa nalimisha shamba mpaka leo niko na shamba ya kakao 7 metre itatoa. Senye mimi napataka franga na nina pata nguvu ya kulimisha. Hata mbula ikanyesha tutakula tu. Maisha ya zamani hatuko tena kule. Hapa tuko mwiamu.
A poor community, let's say they're making $1 a day or $2 a day. One of their targets for improvement on poverty is to get that group of people up to $5 a day, just $5 a day. Well, the good news is then, I've never visited an artisanal gold mining camp in the world where people aren't making at least $5 a day. I founded the Artisanal Gold Council to build a vehicle that's easily trusted by miners. You don't need to use mercury to mine gold. There's methods to completely avoid the use of mercury and increase the amount of gold that's recovered. You know, it's not about making a law that says you can't use mercury. It's about engaging with the mining communities and helping them to employ better practices, increasing their safety, even helping them manage the wealth that's generated. The artisanal mining sector is injecting wealth into parts of the world that really need it. So we're starting to see different types of stakeholders view the sector not as a problem, but as a solution. Gold can deliver wealth right in the middle of a remote rural community. It's a good engine, it's a good seed.
The industry has seemingly always been enabled, first by new science, and then affecting new process with that science. There's over 700 miles of underground tunnels right beneath us where we're driving right now. It was literally considered one of the richest places on Earth. It's hard to imagine The old timers could extract over 8 million ounces of gold with picks and shovels. The wealth that was created, the technologies that were developed here were used all over the world. Cyanide processing is over 120 years old. What we need is a breakthrough where it is clearly faster, it is clearly safer, it is clearly more efficient and cheaper. Then the industry will have to respond to it.
What this process involves is what we call bromination, followed by the very elegant isolation process that is very, very selective for gold. It is maybe 50 times faster than the cyanide process, and then you add on to that the fact that it's not toxic.
What I really am excited about is that the science works. We're not really at an inventing it stage. Sir Fraser's done that, right? We're at a process improvement. And process improvement, the obstacles there are much, much smaller to get over.
Here you are, gold in all its glory. Wonderful, wonderful.
So there's around about 3 million tons of ore here. We'll put a whole network of like Crawley pipes on the top, and then we'll use our new leaching agent to actually soak through the heap, and then we'll have all of that material.
Do we not infiltrate the heap with the pipes as well?
No, you just do it
just over the top.
Just over the top,
oh, okay,
and it
right
filters
over the
down,
top, and then filters down.
And then the pipe, as you see a pipe over there, that's when the golden solution will come down,
racing down there into the pond.
Into the pond, and we'll collect it in the pond there, and then we'll take that material.
It would be my dream come true if it were to be adopted across the planet. That will give me enormous satisfaction that I've contributed something to society and to the environment on a global scale. We are looking at an industry that has been in place for more than a century, and in the hardcore parts of that industry there's going to be resistance, as always. You know, we've always used cyanide and we will continue to use cyanide, and they feel they're comfortable using it, and they don't want to know about something that's new.
To the place still, doesn't it? This is what's at the bottom of the lake here. That's the stuff.
I don't think that stuff decomposes, does it? No, that's there forever.
That's there forever.
Yeah, this is pretty grim. That's supposed to be drinkable.
Most people, as far as I know, are using bottled water.
A lot of people don't trust what's going on. They don't trust what the mine says, that the water's fine, the fish is fine, everything's fine, like there's no problem. mine has faced no charges. They're basically just getting away with, the largest environmental disaster in Canadian history.
It's shocking that that company hasn't had to pay a very substantial penalty. It's shaping up to be another example of how the general public is made to bear the costs of these activities whilst the executives appropriate the profits.
Those practices have to change. We have to have a higher valuation on water than we do on gold.
An immigrant, there's no plans to do any mining because we haven't found anything yet. We're probably at least 10 years from that, decision. It depends on what we hit. And so if there is no mine, then there's no worries. Let's find out, because until we find out for sure, people are going to keep coming, because that's the lure of gold.
Clean water, clean air, beautiful mountains. This is a wonderful recreational area, and I hope it stays that way.
What is that, huh? The boys.
Why would you destroy an economy for something that's historically short-lived, a boom and bust industry that has a horrible reputation, and they've earned it? We went to Washington, D.C., and we got to talk to Representative Zinke and Senator Daines and Senator Tester.
Yellowstone National Park is the first national park, and it's sacred to all Americans today. That's why I'm excited to announce segregation of 30,000 acres of Forest Service land.
I think it's been unprecedented what the Yellowstone Gateway Business Coalition has accomplished in 2 years.
像我们跟前的总共头一次我们骑的时候，头一棒子我们骑的40去，基本都送到了。一车拉30多人，现在是我们的一车人是只有几个人，只有4、5个人还在吧。
徐师傅你好，今天检查。耐气中药必须吃，吃了以后把这个周围这些小的这个点点周围这个影消除了。这个费用大概每个月不到1000块钱。
The extraction of gold is done regardless of the impacts and regardless of the long-term consequences.
We have a responsibility to know and the right to demand that the gold that we use is clean.
And I think the challenge really is to increase the awareness of consumers so that they know that there is a choice.
our responsibility goes back to the actual people, from whose land we are taking the raw materials that produce our beautiful products.
因为我已经到了晚期了，因为别人3大2年他都死了，所以我很奇迹，我很幸福，因为我不怕死。 你一旦一死，或者1年、2年，这个人都已经无影无踪了。虽然我尘肺病死了，可是后代或者是很多人还在我死了以后，在他的心目中总还想多待几年的意思。我的高兴，我即将快达到了，我还活着。